seek the answers and we seek control, control becomes more elusive. When we let go and we step into the feminine, that's something we talk a lot about in UTP, trusting and this word joy and presence. When we do that, funny enough, that's when the answers come.
100%. Yep, that's right.
Hello and welcome back to A Sharper Life. I'm your host, Nikki Sharp, and today I have a little bit of a different episode. You all know that I love to switch it up. So I wanted to share the story of Corrie, who has joined my program, the Ultimate Transformation Program, and has had just tremendous change in her life. And I wanted to share her story with you because she has come from a place where I think you're going to resonate of feeling like she had everything, right? Quote unquote, I have the job, I have the career, I have the family, the husband, I have the house. And yet there was something in her life that was missing and there was a lack of fulfillment inside. And I get this so often, women coming to me where they say, I can't put my finger on it, but I'm not feeling good about myself, even though I quote unquote have it all. And, I feel like you could probably relate to that because she was numbing herself. She was drinking sometimes to numb the pain or eating. She wasn't happy with her weight. And so she joined the Ultimate Transformation Program wanting to see a shift in her life. And I share this with you all because I think it's so important to hear from just everyday people, quote unquote, who are not the expert, because I understand it can be challenging of like listening to these experts and like, well, they have it all figured out. And quite the opposite. Every single person I have on the podcast has had to go through a journey to get to where they are. And Corrie is such a radiant example of this, where now she is so fulfilled in her life. She truly understands who she is, and she's learned to fall in love with herself. And, with the Ultimate Transformation Program, her soul said yes to this higher version. And that is why she ended up joining. And so, in the beginning, when everyone joins UTP, they don't necessarily want to share their quote unquote problems. And they're scared because, we are scared that someone might judge us. And that's because we're really judging ourselves. And so, this couldn't be further from the truth of what ended up happening from Corrie. And she has now done 2 rounds of UTP, and she explains why she did that and just the information and the 180 that she's had, including, promotions in her job. She's, after 40 years, stopped dieting, lost the weight that she wanted to. And every single one of her goals that she came into UTP with, she has achieved them and then so much more. Her friends and family are commenting on how incredible she is. And they're really looking to her for advice now because of this new version that she's emerged from UTP. And so in this episode, Corrie is sharing just how much more she knew was out there for her, and the feelings of just uncertainty of going into this program, but then the transformation of what happened. And all of this happened in a 4-month period. And then obviously she decided to do the program again, which I was so enthralled and ecstatic about. And that was just to deepen learning about herself and what she loves. Corrie, my love, I am so excited to have you here. I'm so thrilled because you joined the Ultimate Transformation Program, and you've actually done it two times, and you've had such a complete shift. But I want to start off with, where are you now in your life? How are you feeling?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I mean, I am a little upset that we only have a glass of water here and not like a glass of wine and chit-chatting in person, but I so much appreciate you having me to talk about that. So where am I now in life? I am centered. I am calm. I am present. And I think the biggest thing is I can finally say I'm happy, truly. It's more than just a smile, right? I think that was kind of where it came from, but I am so incredibly just happy in my life.
I love hearing that. And, for those listening, I really would love to hear, I guess, the journey of where you were before and why it's been such a radical transformation for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the best word to describe my life before UTP was a bit chaotic. Not from the outside, right? If you looked at me or if you met me or you knew me in my job or my career, I think there was an outside perspective of she has everything together, right? She's married and has a child and has a home and has a job and all those things. And I was walking around as like a shell of myself, and I was constantly unfulfilled. And I think that's where I'm at today, is fulfilled. I think that's another really important, powerful word to use, because when you're unfulfilled, you're constantly looking for something more, right? You're constantly looking for, how can I be this? Or when I am this, or I am not good until I am, whatever, insert any sentence. And for me personally, it was, well, yes, I have all these things. And the way you see me on the outside, everyone would say it looked fabulous. I have a great family. I have supportive friends. I had it all. But inside I was hollow. I felt confused. I felt not settled. I was just looking for so much more, and I couldn't put my finger on it. But I was always saying it was about weight, right? It was always about a diet or whether I looked a certain way. And it was never about that. And that's what I know we'll get into that, but it was never truly about that. So unfulfilled is the best way to describe it.
I so resonate with what you're saying. I mean, it's the journey that I've been through as well, where, you quote unquote have everything from the outside, and yet there's still something missing on the inside. And just as you said, you can't quite place your finger on what it is. And so then, especially as women, we try to control our body and how much we weigh, and controlling food as a means to, I guess, find that fulfillment, even though it doesn't work that way. And so, based on where you were, you joined my relationship program, mm-hmm. and which then led you to joining UTP. But I'd love to hear kind of that evolution and what made you join both programs, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's a great question as well. So it's funny because if I look back at the track of my courses over the last 10, 20 years, right? I've done the diets and the books and the little courses and all of those things, but I don't remember how I found you, but I remember seeing there was a relationship course, and whether I followed you on Instagram or maybe someone else did and posted something, I thought to myself, it's a great time for me to be in a relationship course. I have a toddler. I'm not spending time with my husband. I'm going all over the place. I feel like friendships are kind of just sporadic. And it was an opportunity for me to kind of join this course and think about relationships. So I end up joining this course, not really understanding what I'm getting into. And I remember it was right before my 40th birthday, and I was going on a vacation to the Dominican. And my history of vacations has always been, I was going to restrict before vacation so I could be skinny, right? And then when I was there, I was like not going to eat because I didn't want to eat around, because there's food and all that. And then, I'll drink because it'll make me feel better. It'll numb things, and then rinse and repeat, right? And every vacation I felt fat, and I felt like, well, I don't look good. And all of those things are going through my head instead of being present and enjoying the vacation. And I remember in the relationship course, it had started in, I think it was late March or maybe first week of April. And my vacation was in May. And in my mindset, I was like, okay, I'm going to start this diet. I'm going to start this diet today. And you had said something in that course that triggered me in such a way. And because it wasn't, you didn't start by teaching about, here's how to make your life better with your spouse. Like it was not about that. It was more of like it's you. You're the reason you're not succeeding. And I remember you saying, it's not about the food. So even in my other courses, I don't teach about the food. So stop thinking about the food and the restriction and all that. And you had talked about being present and loving where you're at today and accepting where you're at today. And I'm like, oh. And then I realized my worst relationship in life wasn't even the one with, my mother or my husband or, my terrible 3-year-old toddler who was here. It was with me. And it was this moment that clicked and I was like, okay. So it's me. And I remember going on that vacation for the first time ever, going in with, I'm going to love myself where I'm showing up today because I'm not going to lose 50 pounds in one sitting, right? I'm not going to lose 20 pounds or I'm not going to be, a supermodel. And I remember being on that vacation and just really being present and just loving it. I loved being there. I wasn't worried about a skin fold or a gray hair or all of that. I was present with my husband and my friends. I was having fun. I was enjoying myself. I was slowing down and I was like listening to myself. The art of slowing down is crazy for someone like me. And I know we'll have to talk a little bit about that as well.
So going, as you did that with the relationship course, one might think, okay, I found the secret sauce. I feel great. So what was it that led you into the Ultimate Transformation Program?
So after the Ultimate Relationship course ended and after that vacation, I came back and I was wanting more. I was like, oh, this is so great. And so you were posting things about the UTB. I had no idea what it was. I was unclear, uncertain. And when I was excited though. I was excited that this thing was coming out. And I remember, you were doing advertising on it and I couldn't wait. And then that email came and I was thrilled, but I think you'll remember this. I had emailed you. The email came days after my mother died. I think my mother died on August 20th. And then I think your email came out on like August 23rd and I was broken. And I remember emailing you and I remember saying to you, I don't know if you remember me you're like, of course I do. And I said, I was so excited to do UTP and I don't know what to do. Like my mom just died. And your first email back to me was just so kind. It was what I needed at the moment. You were like, I am so sorry. I cannot imagine the pain you're going through. And it was one of those moments where you didn't come to me and say, oh, well, you should just do it anyways, right? It wasn't like that. You showed this empathy towards me and you showed this compassion towards me. And you had asked me, you said, I'll ask you a question. Like, do you think your mom, what do you think she would want from you right now? And it was a great question. And I was kind of scratching my head a little bit. And then, I think I went back and forth a little bit and you had offered me up, kind of a podcast that someone had done and around, connection. And you're like, when you're ready in time, and you held space for me. You held space for me to say, yes, I'm in or no, I'm not. But I remember after talking to you and I walked away and I think it was a day later, I emailed you back and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because it's what I wanted to do. And yes, life ends at this point for my mother, but like, how do I fix my life now? Like, how do I come back after arguably the lowest point of my life and like step forward into who I should be now? Because when you lose a parent, part of you is gone. And so now this part of me is gone. And so who am I really?
So powerful. And I think so many people can relate because very often I find people coming where they want to join when the circumstances are right, when I have enough money, when my business is going well, when I feel ready. And it's like, you will never feel ready to go on the soul journey. And quite the opposite, that in our hardest moments, that's when we need the support from others. That's when we need this, our little goddess collective that we create with UTP. And our soul needs other people to be vulnerable. So we know we're not going through it alone. And that's something, just as you're saying, like that I held space during this program. And I know you can speak about this. I am so vulnerable in my own life, way more than on Instagram. And so people really get to see, the women that join, what's going on, how I'm handling challenges in real time. And I think that's just a powerful thing for everyone to recognize, that change doesn't happen when things are going good. Change happens when we feel at the lowest of lows.
Absolutely. And I think that community that you've created within UTP, both times I've been in it, I can honestly say I have friends from it, right? Some women. And what you do is you put together a group of women, whether or not they come to you via, the universe, or whether they come to you because they're like me and they're curious and have no clue what's going on. You put together this group of women and they show up, and it is a community, and it's a sense of, I can be truly who I am and not be judged and not come into this, alone. And I remember, like, again, I was like, I'm so sad. Like, who's going to want to be around me? I'm just so sad. And I never, during the first 4 months of UTP, or during the first UTP, the 4 months, I was never sad. I looked forward to those calls because I knew it was a space where, number one, I was going to learn, but number two, the WhatsApp group that we use and we communicate through, I could literally go in there on a Wednesday and just say, I'm not doing well. And it's interesting because, yes, I have a group of friends here, but sometimes you don't feel comfortable doing that. And you just need people to hear you and listen to you and just put their arms around you, right? And that's what this community creates. And whether it's a parent passing or a difficult relationship that someone has or giving, like, we're all there supporting each other in such an amazing way.
Yes. And yes. And yes. the UTP community is unlike anything. And it's something that I'm just so proud of, the woman showing up and you showing up. And, I would love to get into, your goals, because in the beginning of the program, you fill out copious amounts of forms because I need this information to help you best through your journey. And, I'm helping each person directly because we have one-on-one calls. And during our first one-on-one call, as you shared your goals with me, with love, I called BS on a few of the things you were saying. And I do so with love to help you grow. And I channel from divine spirit, it's like I'm past messages to share on. And I know you got very frustrated with me, as is normal because our ego doesn't like to be challenged. And yet you had the most transformation after, getting frustrated with me and then realizing, oh, this is actually true. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about the coaching process with me and what you took away from that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was so angry at you, and you bring these up again. I always laugh because I know you and I crack up about it, because I remember when we had the one-on-one coaching and I came in and listen, I knew it all because I've done it all, right? I spent 40 years reading every single book. If you look at my office right now, there's a plethora of books here, right? And I'm a manager at work and I know this. And so I came in knowing it all. And I remember, so there's two goals that I can specifically remember that you coached me through, and the input and output are not even close. And I actually use this in everyday life, and we can table that. But my number one goal was to lose weight. Of course, whose isn't it, right? I'm like, I'm looking at Nikki. I'm like, I want to be just like Nikki, right? And again, I'm not thinking rational. And then my second goal was to learn to love myself again. So let's go to the first goal we talked about. I was like, I want to lose weight, right? And you were like, great. Okay. What does that mean to you? I'm like, well, I want to be fit and I want to do this. And you're like, okay, great. So you picked it apart more. You're like, well, what do you do? And I sat there and I told you about, I wake up at 3:30 a.m. and I have this whole list, and I journal and I take 10 minutes of Spanish and I go downstairs and I work out, and then, I meditate, and you looked at me with a straight face and you're like, that sounds like another to-do list for you. And I was like, where everyone else in my life is like, you're so admirable.
You're amazing. You're doing all the things. Yeah.
Right. You're like, why don't you just sleep in? And I was like, that's so annoying. Like, I remember being like, well, that's annoying. And I was like, well, because I can't sleep in, Nikki. I have a kid and I have this. And in my mind, right, my mind is running, right? Because now I'm in this like panic, flight or fight mode. And I'm like, well, Nikki, you don't understand because you don't have a kid. And you're like, okay, like, you're right. I don't okay. So maybe you pick one of those things. I'm like, but what about the other things? Right. And I'm so worked up because you are not loving my morning to-do list. And And so that was kind of number one. And so we're like, let's move on to goal number two, right? Let's talk about, and so I'm like, I'm going to learn to love myself again, right? Because I was on that vacation, I loved myself, and then my mom died, and I was like, oh God. And now I'm like, I'm going to learn to love myself again. And, again, with your very Nikki attitude, you're like, have you ever loved yourself? And I was like, yeah, like, and it was one of those moments where I was like, of course I have. And like, look at all I've built around me, and look at, like, of course I love myself. And so I left that call with you, like, I left the call first. I'm like, she hates me. Cause right. Obviously I was like, she didn't love everything I did. And like, everyone loves everything I do. Right. And number two, I was like, she's questioning my routine. And it's like, this thing that was like so important to me for a year and a half or 2 years, how long I was doing this crazy thing. And as we went through UTP, and as I started listening to other stories, and as I started listening to my own stories, I was like, okay, so it's not about the routine. And the routine I'll be honest, the routine part didn't come for a long time. Even that was the second UTP where I kind of course corrected that, because it's really hard to unbreak a routine that you've had for so long, because it was like part of my identity. It was a big part of my identity. But the second piece on the getting to love myself again, I sat there and listened and absorbed and did the work and did the binder and did the exercise. And there was a part in maybe month 2 or 3 where I was like, oh my God, I don't love myself, and I've never loved myself, because it's not even about loving myself. I don't know myself.
Yes.
I don't know who I am. I've been playing a role for 40 years of what everyone else around me wants me to be. Who am I? Who is Corrie? At the core of this, who am I truly? And I looked at my goals and I'm like, oh my God, my goal is to get to know myself. And it's crazy as a woman to say that, because we're told we need to be confident and strong and, hold a family and, be the wife. And I'm like, if anyone around me figured out I didn't know who I was, like the world's going to end. Right. But then look at me today. I'm just a new version of me. And like, I got to know the real me. So everyone else around me is getting to know the real me. So the coaching's tough. You asked the question. The coaching was rough.
I mean, I acknowledge that you say that. And I remember all of the calls with every single person. And I remember that. And with so much love, it was that one word again, where I just stopped. And anyone who follows me on Instagram or listens to my podcast or, listening to this or has done UTP or any program, that I show up with full love. I'm never doing anything out of a place of anger, trying to, intentionally piss you off. And it's so interesting, because the things that we get triggered by are actually the points in which they're truth, and we don't want to admit them. And so here I am, and I'm just holding the spiritual mirror, a big concept that we talk about in UTP. And, it was that one word again. I'm learning to love myself again, or I want to love myself again. And it was like, okay. And so that was it. It wasn't even the learn to love myself. It was like just this word again. And with that, and, your first goal of losing weight, something profound happened where you ended up, something clicked by the end of UTP. And I'd love for you to share that, because I remember you telling us about it. And then in round 2, where your whole mindset had shifted about weight. And then literally the weight had just like melted off without you having to try. So you actually achieved the goal. And this is what I love in UTP, is when we get clear on what the real goals are, and then you're doing all of the work behind the scenes, in the subconscious mind and in the dream binder, your goals happen in 4 months. That's why I'm like, I guarantee you will see the results that you want. But I'd love for you just to share, what this kind of mindset shift for you was, and then the results of that.
Yeah. So when I started to learn the biggest thing is getting to know yourself is incredibly scary, because there are demons you've never addressed. And then there are really good parts of you. You're like, why have I been sheltering that part of me? Like, that part is amazing. So when it clicked, it was interesting. I was always super hyper focused on like, I need to eat healthy and I need to exercise and I need to do all of these things. And I said to myself, I can remember it clearly. It was in January and it was after UTP. I said, what if I just trusted myself? Like, what if I stopped listening to all the other noise around me? And what if I stopped staring at Instagram and being like, but this person says I need to like be on this diet. And what if I just slowed down and asked myself, what is it that I need today? Like, what happens if? And at first it was weird because I'm like, you know what? I actually want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Oh, I tell the peanut butter.
I remember this story. Yeah. And what I want to just add really quick is just as you're saying this, it is you literally learning to know yourself, getting to know yourself by trusting that intuition of yourself. And that's why I questioned the learn to love myself again, because it wasn't about that. It's who am I? And now here you are saying, okay, who am I? What do I actually want? And then that's where everything happens. So continue with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Very important story. So I remember I'm like, I'm going to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I made it and I sat down with my son, Jackson, and he had a peanut butter sandwich and I'm just sitting there and I'm like loving this peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it was on regular bread. Oh my God. Like not a keto bread, right? It was with, now granted, it was natural peanut butter just because I don't like sugary things, right? But who cares, right? And I'm eating this peanut butter sandwich. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. And for like 12 years, I was like, I can't eat peanut butter and jelly sandwich because somebody told me the carbs are bad. And like, there's too much sugar there. And and so in my mind, I was doing all those things. And so I ate it and I was like, oh my God, that was so good. And then I moved on with my day and it was, noon, 1, 2. And I'm like, I'm not really hungry. And I'm like, you know what? And then, 3 o'clock, and I'm like, I am hungry. Again, stopping myself. I'm like, what do I want? Like, what do I need? And I was like, an apple sounds really good. Again, carbs, right? More sugar. And again, I trusted, I stopped that thought process of being like, okay, carbs and sugar. I was like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy. I'm like, oh, this is so good and juicy. And like, I just love this. It's amazing. And the funniest thing happened. When I started trusting myself more, I stopped doing crazy things. Like I stopped
like the 4 a.m. wake up.
Correct. I stopped restricting because I didn't need to restrict because anything I wanted, I would have. I stopped binging on shit I didn't want. Like I wouldn't go to the store and buy like, the double-decker oatmeal cream pie because I was restricted for so many years. I didn't want it because I was like, I'm actually having food that I really like and you eat less of it. And then the crazy thing too is that the exercise, it also comes, right? Like I used to be a really like avid runner and I didn't run because when I got older, I didn't run because it was like something I loved to do. I ran because I had to do it, because I had to work out, because I needed to sweat to have cardio. Right. But I started doing things like Pilates and, maybe I only had 10 minutes. So I like showed up for 10 minutes and did a couple of squats and like, I just showed up differently to myself. And I started trusting that like, my body would tell me what I needed. There were days my body was like, I want a hard workout. Great. There were days, I think I told you about the fried food thing. Like I went out and I was like, I want chicken fingers and I ordered them and I just didn't feel great afterwards. And so again, my old self would be like, I don't feel great. So what am I going to do? I'm going to numb that pain. I would just check in. And then during the day with work, it actually spiraled to everything in my life. So during the day with work, when I would feel that sense of myself getting overwhelmed, right? I'm like, oh, I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed and this person's coming at me here. And I would say, okay, hold on, pause. Let me walk out of my office. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to ask myself what's triggering me and what do I need right now? Okay. I need to walk. I'll take my next call on a walk. I can do that. I need to step away for 30 minutes. Okay, I've got it. I can step away for 30 minutes. And so that was the kind of transformation I had, which in a million years, because I didn't know who I was and I was trying to be someone else, I never could have imagined that today I'm in a position where I fully trust myself and know what I'm doing for me is right. And there are hard days. Don't get me wrong. There are sticky days. There are sticky moments. I'm not perfect. No one is, but I can acknowledge it. And now I'm able to move past so much further versus like, the old Corrie would spiral, and then it would be 2 more weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, 4 weeks passed. And, then you just feel worse and worse.
What's interesting and what you're sharing, something we talk about in UTP, is how we put on different masks for different people, meaning that we're never showing up as ourself. And that's just, as you said, like, it's scary to get to know yourself because you have to acknowledge parts of yourself that you've hidden or, put behind the rug or, put under the rug. And so then we put a mask on, and then we show up, with this mask, hoping that the person will like us because of this mask. And then it's like, there's only so long you can keep up with the masks. And, as you were saying, in 40 years, like, everything looked good from the outside. And so often I have women come to me for this program and they're like, I have everything. I have the white picket fence. I have the family. Why am I so unhappy? And it's because of these different masks. And just as you said, it's because we've never gotten to know who we are. And this is why I love the Siamese twin, the drawing that we do. But I'd actually like to hear, what were some of the most impactful exercises for you in this transformation from the Dream Binder?
So I think, number one is the what then. And I've told you this, I use it in life every day, the concept of breaking this thing down, right? So, it kind of goes, they merged to me a little bit with the goals and the what then, right? When you break down, like, what is the goal behind the goal? And same thing with what then. What I do in life now is, when I can feel things bubbling up, I ask myself, okay, and then what then? And then what then? And it ultimately gets down to, like, okay, well, that's ridiculous, right? Like, that's not going to happen. So calm down. And the same thing it goes with, I use that in even in my everyday, my job, right? When people come to me and ask me something, I'm like, great. Okay. Why? And they're like, oh, well, so-and-so. Okay. And then what happens? And they're like, well, blah, blah, blah. And it's never the problem that they come to me with, right? It's always, it's 10 layers down. And so it's something that I use every day in life, and with my husband and my child, and my child's 4, so he doesn't quite understand yet. But, you get to the really granular parts of it. So I love that. I love the Siamese twin. I wish I brought my things out, but that was such an amazing exercise to do, because the visual of, the one side versus the other, it was so important to see, right? Like, oh, okay. So that's why. And once you accept that there's, like, ugly parts, ugly in air quotes.
And when the Siamese twin is, just for those listening, it's the ego mind. And so what we do is understand the ego mind, the voice that it is, how it sounds, what it talks to you. And then you understand your true self, so that you can get clarity on when these sabotaging moments are happening. It's like, okay, is that my ego, or is that really me? And then it's easier to kind of pull yourself out of it. I wanted to actually just quickly touch on, we don't need to go into details, and also for time's sake, but with this and the what then and everything you've done in this transformation within your own career, you have tremendously just had so much impact with those you work with, as well as, you've kind of climbed the ladder. And I would love to just hear how UTP enhanced and helped your work to have more abundance in all areas.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm showing up differently as a person, and so everyone around me shows up differently as well. I'm listening more. I'm present. I think it's so easy in a technology space that I'm in to, be multitasking and you're here and you're here and you're here, but I'm present. I'm also coming at it with compassion. I think that's a big thing that I've learned in this program, compassion for myself and others. And another thing is the judgment and expectations. I think I can slow down and realize, okay, this is me. I'm judging and I'm having expectations of something. How can I have more compassion and meet these people, right? Whether they're people that I work directly with on a day-to-day basis, or people that I have a one-off conversation with. It's how do I show up differently and build my energy up, so they also know that they have a safe space for their energy. I show up more vulnerable, and I think everyone else shows up more vulnerable. I'm also just, because of where I'm at today, I'm just so grateful. And I think when you're so grateful, you don't want. And so there's not a lot of oh, well, if I was here then, right? I am so happy to be here today. And I'm so grateful for the team I work with, like my leadership. And I know that they feel that too. And I have, friends at work that I've talked to about UTP, and I try to explain it. And, some of the stuff I've learned, I've shared with them. And when I am showing up in my Siamese twin, I have a really good friend that will call me out, and they'll say to me, like, you aren't being who you are. And
right, true Corrie.
It's true Corrie. And so it's amazing that you can take that into your career and your job and growth. And I don't think enough women in the professional space are willing to say, I need help.
Right.
I need help. And I'm struggling, like mentally or physically or whatever it may be, because again, it goes back to, we need to be on, we need to have this mask. And I was okay to say, like, I need help. And now I've gotten the help that I need, and I've worked on myself, and I'm showing up 1,000 times better.
Beautiful. And something that was so fun, we became friends. And this is what I love about UTP, because it is a small, intimate community of just incredible women, of being vulnerable and authentic. We became friends, and you came to Miami and you brought your dream binder and I brought mine, and we kind of went through them. And that was so much fun for me to also see kind of the manifestation of your own dreams and things that you want. And, you then decided to go into UTP a second time. And yep. For the people listening, they might think, well, why? Why go a second time if this program works so well, which it does, why go into it a second time? And so I'd love for you to share why you did it, and also your experience and some ahas, which you haven't even shared with me, as you told me off camera.
I did. So it was the fine tuning, right? I was on this high, and I needed to continue my growth because I knew there was more in there. And yes, I was able to start getting to know myself, but I wanted to start like understanding, now that I know myself, like understand why I do the things I do and how do I grow from there. So that's why I did it a second time, because it's so easy to join a program or do something and then not have the long-term success because you forget, right? And I didn't want to lose that momentum. And I felt like I was almost there. Right. I was just so close. And I was like, I just need to do it again and uncover a little bit more. And it was interesting this time around, because I remember last time I was hyper focused on the section around family and, dream family and dream career and all that stuff. And one of my ahas, I kind of said off camera to you, is I didn't do it this time. I didn't do, because you called me out in Miami. You're like, you didn't even do this section. I was like, I actually think I'm blocked. And one of the things I was thinking about after you called me out, a little embarrassing, right? Like you don't do your homework and you're in front of your teacher. I'm like, oh, I think for me, I'm like, it's one of two things. Either I'm at a really good place career-wise and family-wise that I'm just content and like my dreams are there. And so now I need to kind of stretch and take it one step further, which is scary for me. Or I just might be blocked on the family piece. And some of that might have to do with the grieving process I'm going through. And so bringing up that feeling right now, it's not the right time for me. And so it's interesting because I'm trying to toy with that. And I've thought about it since our time in Miami. And I'm like, gosh, like, what is it? Is it one or the other, or is it somewhere in between? And that's where I have to start asking myself these questions and digging into it a little bit further. But it's an interesting aha, because I thought I I was, having it all together. And I think that's an area that I'm starting to push down a little bit because everything else seems to be smooth.
Well, you know what I want to acknowledge on that. And I love this word marinating. I'm going to marinate on this. So meaning that you don't need to have the answer right now. I'm just going to marinate on this thought of why am I doing the thing that I'm doing or not doing the thing that I'm doing? Because it kind of gives us permission to take a step away from the I need a solution now, which is very masculine energy. And, something for you and where you're at. And what I love about what you're sharing is everyone's UTP journey is going to be so radically different. And you join multiple, like I have women who have joined 3 years ago, who have done one-on-one, they come back, they do it again. And the reason that people do it again is because you uncover, just like we've talked about, in other podcasts that I've shared, this spiritual onion, and you uncover another layer of yourself. And it's like, even for me, I use my dream binder every day. I go to Mexico, I take it with me. I'm always uncovering and unpeeling these layers. And it's like, oh, interesting. I'm getting even more knowledge of who I am. And so there's no right or wrong where you're at. It's just the acknowledgement of, here's where I'm at right now. Okay, right? How interesting. That's a concept we talk about. And just being okay with where you are. And I love what you said at the end, that you're actually feeling so fulfilled in other areas of your life, which was not the case when you came in. Yep. And so now it's like, okay, let me go to this next area where there is a bit of stickiness and understand why. And, what I'm hearing is that you're going into it with permission for yourself to not know the answer. And when we show up that way, with that compassion of self, that's when we find the answers. How interesting. What a conundrum. When we seek the answers and we seek control becomes more elusive. When we let go and we step into the feminine, that's something we talk a lot about in UTP, trusting and this word joy and presence. When we do that, funny enough, that's when the answers come.
100%. Yep, that's right.
So, I would love to, I want to say, get your take for anyone listening on UTP. Like, I didn't pay you to do this. I just asked you one day randomly. I was like, hey, would you want to come on my podcast and just share about your experience, for no other reason than just to let other women know, regardless if you join UTP or not, that change is possible and you can see your wildest dreams come true. But like with that, it was funny because I remember you said, oh my God, this was on my dream life to do a podcast. Yep. And I'm like, how in alignment is that? And I would, be interested to hear your thoughts for someone who maybe has heard about UTP. They're listening to this saying, wait, I want that. Or, they resonate with your story before of like, quote unquote, having it all from the outside and just feeling that lack of something. What would you say to that person who was in your shoes before you joined UTP?
It's a great question. I think for me, you can continue to spend your time, money, energy, as we learn UTP, right, on things that are going to be things that are in the moment, right? So again, the diet, the book, whatever. Or you can decide to make this change and commit and let yourself, let yourself be vulnerable enough to do something that seems really hard and seems a little scary. And in that, for that's UTP. It seems hard. It seems scary. There's a price, right? However, take all of that out of the equation and ask yourself, do I need change and do I want change? And I think that the other part of that is, if it's scary, that's probably good. No one wants to be ordinary, right? Allow yourself to be a little extraordinary and allow yourself to grow. And I my thoughts on UTP. I've talked about this with you a million times. I tell everybody, it is an investment that you will never regret, ever. So it is amazing. And I cannot, I literally cannot say enough amazing things about it and you and the women that also join.
Thank you. That means a lot. And it's, as I've said, I love this community. I love getting to teach and being vulnerable and just sharing the knowledge that I have and helping other women, succeed. And that's something I know you've said too, is there's not many women out there that are truly cheering you on. And I know, from what we were saying earlier, it sounds like I'm a hard coach and I show up with love, but I'm curious your experience. Just, yes, I can challenge you on certain ideas, but you've also said that I'm incredibly supportive of women. And I'd like to get your feedback on that, because I think that's a place where women, until you join, you don't necessarily see the championship of other women?
Yes. I think, in life in general, we are taught from a young age, if you're not this as a woman, you are not, if you're not a supermodel, right, then you are just below that, right? So for me as a woman, I always judged my own self on looks and, appearance and how smart I was and what school I went to and all of that stuff. Right. And then because we judge ourselves, other women judge us too, because we're insecure. And, and when you find your group of friends, you have these friends and then you're judging other women. And it is kind of it's a toxic environment to be in. And I've been fortunate enough in my life where I've been surrounded by very kind women to me and very strong women. However, it is different when you open yourself up and you're vulnerable. And I don't go to my friends and say, listen, I sat in the snack cabinet today and binged on my kid's entire box of cookies, right? I don't say that to my friends. I don't say it to my coworkers. But in this group, it's like, oh my God, I feel you. And it's, what it is, Nikki, it's to be seen and to be heard and not to feel like some leper, because that's how I felt for so many years of like, what if someone found out that like all of this stuff about me and hated me? And it's so interesting. It's different because it's when people find out all the stuff about me, how much are they going to like me? And that's what UTP is. And that's what like this community is. And that's what your coaching is. It's you have this incredible ability to pull things out of other women. And again, I've told my sister this, right? Like there's an intimidation factor, right? You're beautiful. And I remember again, the first call, we go back to that first call we had. I don't know if you remember, I was like, oh my God, I look so red. And like, oh yeah, you look so pretty. I'm not wearing makeup. And I was this like spaz of like what, and instead of you focusing on it, you're like, you look beautiful. Let's talk about your goals. And it's like, you're able to have this ability to take women down to where they should be in their lives and then pick them up. I'm not saying push down and pick up, but I'm saying you open the door for us to see our authentic true selves, and then you lift us up. And then you encourage every woman in the group to lift one another up. And you're so supportive of that. And that in itself is an incredible superpower that you can't teach somebody. It is something that you have in you. And it's something that women that are part of this group look at and emulate.
Thank you. And I think part of that is as I show up so vulnerably and authentically in my journey and struggles and challenges with you all in this group, it's easier to have that connection. And, I think part of this, like with UTP and the community that we create, and it's not just me creating it, it's everyone's participation with this. It's so important because I never felt that growing up. I never felt like I had women that I could go to and talk and share. And like even my mom, I wanted to be able to say things about when I was going through my eating disorders. And I think now it's just, I feel safe. Like I feel in my feminine to be able to share challenges. And I'm very, very vulnerable in stuff I'm going through. And I share exactly what exercises from the Dream Binder I use and exactly how what I'm going through and how I handle it. And so I also just want to say thank you. And I appreciate you. And I love you and I love this community and I love UTP. So with that, as we're wrapping up, what is in the future for Corrie? Now that you've done UTP 2 times and you have all of these amazing dreams in your Dream Binder, how are you taking this work and where are you going from here?
I mean, the sky's the limit, right? It's a great question. And I think that for me, I don't have like an exact route of where I want to be, but I will say that I trust so deeply in myself and the people I've decided now to surround myself with, that I know that whatever it is I want to do in life, or whatever it is where I end up, and what type of mom I show up as a friend, I know I'm now in a position where it's going to be growth and it's going to be a journey. And I am so looking forward to it. It's not a world of anxiety and fear and making myself small. It's opening up to new opportunities and seeing the world in just a very different light.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story. And, again, as I've said, regardless if you join UTP as you're listening to this, I hope you resonate, you as the listener, that change is possible. And it is absolutely, there is so much abundance in the world, and it's finding the right people, the right community, the right women to support you, the right program. And obviously I hope you join UTP because I fucking love it. I know you do. I know everyone does. And we have our monthly membership now with all the girls. I mean, it's such a beautiful community, but I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikki.